Good morning, St. Kitts and Nevis, and welcome to another edition of Inside the News. It's another Saturday morning, and as per usual, I am Jermine Abel sitting in. For this morning, we will have an interesting discussion because we have with us, as promised last week, Premier and Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Mark Brantley, in studios with us. But before we dive into all of that, let us acknowledge our partners, and then we'll jump right into the discussions.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Attention TDC shoppers! The countdown to that day savings is on at all TDC retail stores. This Saturday, 21st December, your that day specialists are making your holiday shopping dreams come true when you shop at the TDC Home and Building Depot, Automotive Division, and shoptdcgroup.com. Enjoy a massive 25% off store-wide. And wait for it, pay no VAT. That's right, double the savings for one day only. Shop around the clock for gifts, gadgets, furniture, appliances, accessories, and everything you need to make this holiday season unforgettable with unbeatable savings. Mark your calendars for Saturday, 21st December, and head to your favorite TDC retail store, where TDC, your VAT Day specialists, are helping you to save even more this holiday season. Terms and conditions apply. See stores for details. TDC, together we succeed.
People make the world go round.
And we are back here on Inside the News. As I said before I took the break, I am Jermine Abel, sitting in today as per usual. Just before we dive into the discussions this morning, I just want to, bring some sad news to the public of St. Kitts and Nevis, to report that this morning the police confirmed that we had another traffic fatality, another road fatality here in St. Kitts and Nevis. 29-year-old Simonette Williams of St. Peter's. There was a hit and run late last evening, and the police reported that this morning. So I just want to begin with that this morning, that there was another traffic fatality here in St. Kitts and Nevis, a hit and run last evening. Yes, so as I did indicate, we have with us Premier Brantley, and I'm going to throw it over to him to give us a little bit of what has been going on from his perspective here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and then we will begin our focused conversation for this morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me. I have not been here at Win FM for some time, and so I'm delighted to be back. It used to be a place that I frequented in the distant past, and I'm happy that Win FM continues to play its role as part of the fourth estate here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and continues to hold people like myself who are in public office accountable, and to have the types of conversations that truly matter. So thank you very much for having me. I, too, would like to express my condolences to the family of young Miss Williams. I'm told she was a young medical doctor. And to say yet again that we, those of us who are road users on St. Kitts and on Nevis, have to exercise proper caution on our roads. There have been too many fatalities, road fatalities, on St. Kitts in the past 2 weeks, and we must all take responsibility. We must all drive carefully, but also drive with the other persons in mind and use our roads responsibly. Both governments, federal government here on St. Kitts, the Nevis Island administration, have invested significantly in upgrading roads all around the island. I had the privilege of being here in St. Kitts for the past week as we had the budget debates, and the road surfaces have been improved dramatically. That, of course, can be an inducement for some to speed. and I'm urging our road users to be cautious. We expect you to come home, your families expect you to come home, and I'm praying and hoping that you exercise the necessary caution on our roads, especially now at Christmas and Carnival time when people will be out fetting, that you be careful on the roads. Again, my condolences to the family of Miss Williams and certainly to all who have lost loved ones through these road fatalities. I extend my deepest condolences. There's a lot going on. I am happy that I have the opportunity to be here in person. I recall the invitation was extended last week, but it was not convenient. And I have actually stayed in St. Kitts so that I could be here and appear in person. And so I'm delighted to be here. And I look forward to a discussion. There are many issues on the table, I feel. Rising cost of living, the recent budgets, not just in St. Kitts, but in Nevis, the state of where we are as a country as we collectively try to achieve sustainability. And I believe that there is a robust discussion that can be had of where we are, where I think we ought to go, and where I think we are falling short. And so we have work to do, to be sure, and it is my hope that so long as I am privileged to be in the position that I'm in, that I can continue to make my contribution to the development of the island of Nevis and more generally to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Okay, let us start where you referenced a bit earlier, the budget. Give us your perspective as the leader of the opposition, and we're talking federally here, regarding the recent debates and the presentation that was made, the $1.127 billion budget.
So for a federation the size of ours, 51,000 people or thereabouts, to have a budget that's over $1 billion is significant. And by my tally, the budget this year is about $100 million or so more than it was last year. The question, however, I believe has to be asked, and I think that we did ask the questions from the opposition benches as to where we're going as a country and in what direction we're headed. I made reference in my response as leader of the opposition to the fact that the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Drew, as Minister of Finance, this is now his third budget. And in each of those three budget addresses, he would have highlighted the overdependence of St. Kitts and Nevis on citizenship by investment proceeds. And this is, as I said, the third budget. I am not seeing the transition of our economy, the diversification that is necessary with sufficient alacrity. I reminded the Prime Minister, notwithstanding he kept saying that he's only been there for 2 years, he's in fact been there closer to 2.5 years. And the fact that we have 5-year terms means, in very real terms, that he's halfway through this term already. And so one would have thought that we would have at least started already to see the blossoming of some of the initiatives to try and diversify this economy. Now, COVID taught us that tourism is fickle, because when COVID hit, we had to close borders, and our economy went into free fall as a result. Certainly from the perspective of Nevis, where we do not have CBI inflows to rely on, it means that we were in serious trouble on the island of Nevis with our hotels closed, our airports closed, etc., our ports closed. We also have the other twin pillar is citizenship by investment. And we have seen the attacks on that program, attacks from without, attacks from within, attacks by individuals, attacks by the EU, United States, Canada, and countries. Again, that can be taken away from us in an instant. When you reflect that since the 2022 budget, I won't go back in time further than this Labour administration, so since the 2022 budget, that CBI has accounted for somewhere between 54 and 56% of our national revenue. And in fact, the Prime Minister noted that in 2022 and again in 2023, that our tax revenue had fallen significantly. In fact, I believe one year it was 18% and the other year it was 11%. Now, in any economy, tax revenue gives a good indication of how the economy is performing, because our tax system is largely based on activities, goods and services. And so you get a sense, say, for example, from your VAT receipts as to what in real-time activity in the economy looks like. if you see a situation where those traditional revenues are falling, but the country is still in surplus position, you start to realize the reality that the CBI monies have really been what has kept St. Kitts and Nevis and the federal government afloat. And I said I wouldn't go back further than 2022, but I believe that those who are listening can check the records, and you will see that were it not for what we call this non-tax revenue, which is a citizenship by investment receipts, that the federal government would have been in serious problems over the past decade or more. And so the CBI receipts have flooded into Bastille. And as a consequence of those, I believe that a sort of paralysis has set in, a sort of, how should I put it, status quo. Money is coming in, we're sleeping, and CBI is earning for us. It's the goose that is laying the golden egg. So we don't have to worry too much about doing other things. And so I think that the pace has been far too slow. I said so in my budget debate, so I'm not saying anything here that I did not say then. And that we need to accelerate the pace of diversification. Now, when I say diversification, what am I talking about? We have agriculture. We've committed to this 25 by 25. We have to ask a serious question. Will we achieve it? Because 2025 is now just days away. 25 by 25, that CARICOM commitment, the idea was to reduce imports in certain areas by at least 25%. I believe that agriculture in St. Kitts, it was said by my colleague Eric Evelyn that if you plant a stone in St. Kitts, it will grow, simply because of how fertile the soil is in St. Kitts. What are we doing? And it's a very serious question. What are we doing in terms of agriculture? What are our opportunities to really make a dent in our food import bill and to ensure that we have work and profitable work, good paying work in agriculture? Now, it may not be agriculture of old, fork and hoe, but it could be mechanized, it could be intense agriculture. In Nevis, for example, we are leading the sub-region in terms of shade house technology. And from those shade houses operating in Nevis, we are, I believe the minister reported, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, who's Minister of Agriculture in Nevis, that we are self-sufficient in Nevis in lettuce, all except one variety. And I'm sure if you are like me and you go to the supermarket from time to time, you now see Nevis grown greens on the supermarket shelves, even here in St. Kitts. I wonder to myself all the time, what if we were to get really serious about agriculture? Because it means that we can multiply that 100-fold. We talk about chicken, low-hanging fruit. Chicken, many people in our federation may not realize, is the most popular meat kind consumed in St. Kitts and Nevis. It is in fact cheaper than fish, believe it or not. And as a consequence, we import millions of dollars worth of chicken. That, again, is an industry that is ripe for us to invest in and become self-sufficient in. Nevis, again, using the example of Nevis, is self-sufficient in eggs, except for 1 month out of the year, which is the December month, the Christmas period, when the consumption goes up dramatically. Otherwise, the eggs you get in Nevis are locally produced eggs. So we have shown that it is possible, and I feel that we need to do more. Agriculture has to be a pillar of our diversification effort. We look at construction. Construction sector was the first sector to rebound after COVID. And I feel that we need to incentivize that sector more to ensure that we have large-scale projects happening. The government itself needs to get its capital projects going. We have all been hearing about the smart hospital. We've been hearing about the Bastille High School. As a matter of fact, the Bastille High School was talked about since Unity was in government. And we were in government for 7 years, and this government has now been there for 2.5. So it's been almost a decade that we're talking about the Bastille High School. These are projects that need to get going. We need to move them from talking about them to actually going on the ground so that they can become engines of this diversification plank. We have been sitting, ladies and gentlemen, on what I think is ultimately the answer for our country, and that is geothermal energy. And I have said so publicly because I believe it is true, that had that geothermal resource been on the island of St. Kitts, it would have been harnessed a long time ago. Because by God's grace, by accident, by whatever, that resource is located on the island of Nevis. It has been buffeted between pillar and post. It has been back and forth. It has been a 20-year odyssey. 20 years that we have known that we have the answer to St. Kitts and Nevis. I make bold to say today that if we can harness geothermal energy, we can overnight transform the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis from what it currently is, heavily dependent on tourism and citizenship by investment, to an energy economy. We can become the Norway of the Caribbean, except that we will be exporting renewable energy, green energy, as opposed to Norway, which of course has made a fortune dealing in fossil fuel. Geothermal energy, in my view, provides a complete answer. We have had water woes, and we had a lot of debate in the House about water. The people of St. Kitts have suffered much more than the people of Nevis in that regard, because on Nevis we have been investing over the period in water. In fact, when I did my assessment, we had invested over $44 million in Nevis in water in the last decade. St. Kitts, there was no corresponding investment in water, and as a result, the people down here have had legitimate concerns. I was over in the Southeast Peninsula a few nights ago, and I was very shocked to learn that they get water 3 days of the week. This is an area which has hotels, it is an area which has nice villas, it is an area which I think has the potential to be unlocked for the future development of the island of St. Kitts and by extension, the Federation. 3 days a week. So apparently they know when they'll get water and they fill up all their tanks and all that. I am here to say today that there is no area in Nevis, however remote, that does not have access to potable water 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if there's some disruption, the water department gives out the notice as to why, and we fix it immediately. As a matter of fact, and I hope the Honorable Spencer Brand, my Minister of Water in Nevis, isn't upset with me, but he just reported to us, just yesterday, that our new well drilling program, one well, will now be giving us in excess of 500,000 gallons of water per day. We are currently in a well drilling process using a company from Trinidad where we will be drilling 9 wells at a cost of, I think, just under $3.5 million US. The first 2 wells have been successful, but one of those 2 is going to yield about 500,000 gallons a day, making it the highest yielding well in all of Nevis. Our aim was to put an additional 1.5 to 2 million gallons of water into the system in Nevis. Now, I'm not going to focus too much on water because I'm dealing with diversification, but the reason I mention water is because we also understand, because of climate change and because of the challenges that we have been facing, our aquifers from which our water comes they're not being recharged at an acceptable rate. Put differently, we are extracting water faster than the aquifers can recharge. That's due to a number of factors, including our rainfall numbers are not what they used to be. The answer, however, is desalination. We are surrounded by ocean. And so if we could find a way, as they've done in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and places like those, to use the vast water in the ocean, take the salt and the brine out and make that water potable, we solve the problem. The only difficulty with desalination is the high cost of electricity, because you have to use electricity to run your pumps, your reverse osmosis pumps. And so I hope the public sees where I'm going, because if we can solve the energy issue, wean ourselves off fossil fuels, get geothermal going. Geothermal, to put it in context, there are periods when the actual cost of electricity, diesel-powered, fossil fuel-powered electricity, is upwards of 50 US cents per kilowatt hour. All the models that we have seen for geothermal tell us it should be in the region of 11 cents or less per kilowatt hour. You compare 50 cents to 11 cents. You see what the saving is going to look like. With cheap, abundant, clean energy, it now means that we can rest our aquifers, allow those aquifers time to replenish, and we move to desalination in a major way. Water now becomes cheaper, more available, more abundant. What is the principal requirement for farming? Water. In fact, some farmers will argue that water is probably even more important than soil. Water. And so imagine you're up in Phillips Mountain, you're up you're down in Sandy Point, you are wherever you are on St. Kitts, you're in Nevis, you're in Cotton Ground, you're in Hanley's Road, but you now have such an abundant supply of water feeding your farms that if we can harness geothermal, if we can transition the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis to an energy-based economy, you solve your energy needs, you solve your water needs through desalination, and you solve your food security needs because you now have more water. So with one blow, you have three pillars of sustainability that you can address: energy, water, and food. So for me, it is a no-brainer. And when we look at the vast sums of money that have poured into St. Kitts and Nevis through the Citizenship by Investment Program, we have never had clear numbers because no government, including the one that I was a part of, ever gave a clear breakout of what the numbers are. But from our extrapolation and investigation on the island of Nevis, we put that at in excess of 5.5 billion EC dollars, and that's with a B, billion EC dollars in the last decade or so. 5.5 billion EC dollars. And I say within the last decade, let me correct that because those numbers were assessed somewhere in 2022. Since then, we have earned probably nearly another billion or so EC dollars. So you ask the question, what have we done with those resources? Yes, we've paid down the debt, and that is good. Yes, we've paid some double salaries, and people jump up and say, hip hip hooray, they got more money. But where have you seen the investment in sustainability? What is the value of getting a double salary or getting a bonus payment of some kind or standing up in the parliament and boasting year after year that we have surplus of hundreds of millions of dollars, but the people in Cairn have no water in their pipes? You go home, Christmas time, you say, I have a double. But when you go out, you're going out to fet, you can't bathe because there's no water. You come home from fetting, there's no water. You turn on your tap, you have air. People still catching water in bucket, in St. Kitts in 2024. Where are the roads? Where are the substantive investment? Where's the electricity? Do you know that up to today, Skelec is renting generators? And the reason is because generators aren't things that you can buy off the shelf. They have to be fabricated. So, if even the decision has now been taken to purchase generators, you're not going to receive them for another 18 months, maybe 2 years. And things are so bad at Skelec, they have to rent generators. And from my understanding of those arrangements, those companies that rent generators actually know that they are the last resort. And so you pay a premium. And that is where we are. That is the state of the country. No investment in water, no investment in electricity. The road network is only now being improved. No investment in healthcare. I heard the Honorable Prime Minister in the House say that the biggest thing at the JNF were buckets. So, our main hospital, they had to have buckets because the place was leaking. So I asked the question, and I come back. I'm going to wrap. I'm sorry. I come back and I say, with that amount of money, do you know that the cost for the first 10 megawatts of geothermal in Nevis was about 60 million US dollars? So 60 million US by my rudimentary math, 160 million EC dollars. 160 million EC dollars when the country took in north of 5 billion EC dollars. through CBI. That has nothing to do with tax revenue in the last decade. It demonstrates to me that if we were really serious about development, if we had a long-term view, then we could have invested in those types of meaningful projects that would catapult us to the next level. And we would, by today, have been the envy, not only of the Caribbean, but of the world, because geothermal promises to make us the greenest place on planet Earth. 100% of our electricity would then be from renewables. And with cheap, abundant energy, you start to attract new industries, you start to attract manufacturing, you start to do things like crypto mining, you start to have, data centers that require large amounts of electricity, you start to transform your transportation sector to purely electrical. Imagine all your buses, your cars, your scooters, your entire tourism plant now is powered by green energy. Imagine the bragging rights when our prime minister or foreign minister, whoever, can stand up at the United Nations and say that St. Kitts and Nevis has weaned itself entirely off fossil fuels for the generation of electricity. We are and can be the poster child for sustainability and sustainable development. But all these surpluses and all this money, but again, and maybe people don't want to hear it, geothermal is in Nevis, and that was the problem. Geothermal was in Nevis, and that was the problem. And I was reminded just yesterday by a debate in the House, and I went back through my archives, and I realized that under the Unity administration, the then minister at some point of infrastructure and energy went down a road where he signed agreements to try to explore geothermal on St. Kitts. So you had already proven scientific testing, analyses, and findings that the resource exists in Nevis in abundance. And you prefer to take money to say, let me explore if St. Kitts has it as well, rather than investing and developing. So I am still optimistic that we can harness that, because people seem to feel that the geothermal is in Nevis, so it's all about Nevis, but it's not. St. Kitts and Nevis is blessed that we are just 2 miles apart. If we can harness that resource, we get it over undersea cables, the people of St. Kitts benefit as well. And so the transformation in our economy I'm talking about is at the national level, at the macro level. So I see agriculture, I see energy, I see transformation in terms of tourism, I see what we can do, and even in terms of the CBI program. I've been advocating for a long time. Let us forget about chasing numbers. Let us forget about new citizens. Refocus. Not that we will deny people coming into the program for the first time. But if you have 50,000 millionaires out there already, citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, go and find them. You have the database. Say to them, we're doing a hospital in Nevis and one on St. Kitts. Can you come and invest? Say to them that the Nevis airport is being developed and the one at RLB needs to be augmented. Come and help. Say to them that geothermal offers a transformation for the country. Come and help. But nobody's paying attention to that core of existing citizens. Everybody's going out there, competing with St. Lucia and Grenada and Antigua and Dominica, who just come. They have just come to the party. When we are the platinum standard, we are the creators of this. The genius of St. Kitts and Nevis was that we created the Citizenship by Investment program 40 years ago. We gave the world the idea. So it is time for us now, just as we created it, to step up and say, we are no longer going to go like we're chasing, sugar cake and how many sugar cakes you can sell. No. We now have a bespoke program that we should be targeting our existing citizens. I've made the point in the parliament, I've made it publicly before, that I met a gentleman who I'm told is from one of the 5 wealthiest families in Yemen. And the gentleman said to me that 43 members of his family have St. Kitts Nevis citizenship, but none of them have ever visited. In fact, he asked me jokingly if the country was a real country. And so I reflect and I say, but imagine This wealthy family, 43 members, are citizens of St. Kitts, but none of them ever come. And that's where I got the seed of the idea, because I said, I wonder if anybody has ever approached them, invited them, encouraged them. And I have said it for 2 budgets running now, that what we need to do here is we need to develop within the Citizenship by Investment unit a bespoke concierge service whose role is to reach out to our existing citizens, let them know what the opportunities are, invite them to come for Carnival and for Music Festival and for Culturama and for all of that, Mango Festival. Let them have a sense of true belonging, that the passport is not just a financial arrangement that they made. And through that, you're not going to get all. But I actually pitched it low. I said, if we have 50,000, I'm just using a round number, 10% is 5,000. If we were able to get 5% interested, that's 2,500 wealthy people who are now saying, man, I have my villa in St. Kitts Nevis, I'm building a hotel, a boutique property there. Come, we're going to come in on our yacht, we're going to fly in on our jet, whatever the case, because these are wealthy people. So we have this core, but we have ignored them in large measure. And I keep begging and saying, listen, this iteration, this framework that we have currently for CBI, in my humble opinion, if it's not yet dead, it is on life support. What we now need to talk about is our existing citizens, those who are citizens from the Citizenship by Investment program, but also our citizens in the diaspora who are come from descent and all of that. We need to focus in a laser-like way on who we have already and say, how can you contribute? How can we leverage your education, your money, your acumen, that vast reservoir of intellectual capacity that we have out there? How can that be brought to bear? And that, I think, will be a huge step forward in terms of the diversification of our local economy. I'll get back then to the point where I started. We have not done nearly enough, and we need now to scale up and to speed up what we're doing to get us to a point where if tomorrow the EU or America or somebody were to put out again some advisory or whatever in relation to our CBI, we can say, well, CBI may not be performing as well, but listen, we have energy, we have agriculture, we have our citizens in the diaspora, including our CBI citizens, contributing in a significant way. We are moving forward. I won't even bother to get into cannabis, because even though I don't use cannabis, I recognize the tremendous economic value we can get from it. And we've been talking about cannabis now for a decade in this country. Not a thing has happened. Not a thing has happened. I went to Toronto the other day, and there was many cannabis stores on the corners, they call them dispensary, as there were Tim Hortons or Starbucks. Every corner you went was a ganja shop. In Canada, you go to some states in the United States, same thing. And we here, where we have criminalized and put people in prison over the years for ganja, sitting around twiddling our thumbs, you keep hearing about the Cannabis Authority, the Cannabis Authority, the Cannabis Authority. What is the Cannabis Authority doing to realize and make possible this dream of yet another avenue where we can diversify? It's part of the agricultural sector, but yet another avenue where we can diversify. I go down to Port Zante. I was there this week, and I must say, the buzz that I saw at Port Zante, the people, I mean, I had to fight my way through the crowd because there were several ships docked and there were thousands of people there. And I smiled because I said, could you imagine if a local person had a little cannabis outlet there, selling edibles or oils or whatever? But we have not yet done what we need to do. And so I continue to ask the question, what are we waiting on? Because as we keep saying we are too dependent on CBI. Well, if you know you're too dependent on CBI, you have to start to do what is necessary in order to move us forward. So I think that the ideas are there. The ideas are good ideas, but we need now the alacrity. We need to push on that pedal and get some of these things moving and off the ground. I've been probably a bit overlong, but certainly I think you have a context.
No,
of where I'm
that's
coming
okay.
from.
You give your perspective on the budget there. But do you think that with all that you just recommended there and the need for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis to diversify more specifically at a federal level away from the CBI program, because this was an initiative, an idea that was also discussed during your tenure within the Unity administration, that there needs to be a shift. And I think at the time, Dr. Harris was throwing out that suggestion, and he got a lot of criticism from the then opposition and a lot of members of parliament then over the way in which he structured his statement to say, he hoped that eventually that might not be a pillar of the economy that we depend on, the CBI program. Do you believe then that the budgets, the consecutive budgets that the current administration has laid out over the years have not gone far enough, including the 2025 appropriations, in light of the fact that we really need to begin to up the ante in terms of whether or not it be geothermal, agriculture, and these other spin-off in order for us to move away from that dependency?
So, my brother, I'll put it this way. I'm a politician, and I know that politicians' tool of trade is language. We talk, and many of us are very good at talking. We have, however, as a country, to measure the talk against what you see on the ground, the performance. There used to be a slogan, the opposition in Nevis had a slogan, that performance matters. So the former Prime Minister, Dr. Harris, whatever he might have said about diversification, it is clear, I believe, for all to see that Dr. Harris was wedded to CBI. That the surpluses declared, the bonuses, the double salaries declared, it all came out of CBI. There was nothing else happening. That was the only dance that was keeping. This new government equally is in a situation where CBI is the only dance that is keeping. Let me put it differently. We are expected to earn just over $1 billion in revenue. Take 55% of that out. We are expected to earn about, I'm giving rough numbers, but $1 billion and spend about $1 billion. So we have a small surplus, I think, that's projected. Take 55% of that revenue out, and you have 450, 500 million left to finance $1 billion worth of expenditure. You see where I'm going with this? So when I talk about the overdependence, now on Nevis by comparison, where we do not have the luxury of sitting back and seeing CBI money just flowing in year after year, we get a specific amount that comes. We don't get any increased amount if, for example, the CBI program performs better than expected, which has happened in a few years. We get this set amount. That amount in Nevis, I think, accounts for about 30% of our revenue. So still very important, because if you were to take off 30%, you have a problem. But you compare 30% there to 55% on St. Kitts, and you realize that both economies are dependent in terms of revenue, but St. Kitts is decidedly more so. So I get to the point, and I believe that whatever the language has been and whatever the commitments that might have been made when we speak, the question still remains, what have we done on the ground? Do you see the movement that was promised in cannabis? Because cannabis was talked about under the former administration. I was a member of that administration. What is the movement? You say, oh, you could grow 5 trees, and if you get caught with a spliff, you get a ticket. But how does that move the country forward in terms of an industry? And I'm not here sitting down to pretend that it's going to be easy. You have some issues, like the banking issues and all of those. You have a massive education campaign to mount so that our young people especially are properly informed of the risks of cannabis use. But as an industry, as we talk about diversification, how is it we allow places like Canada, cold Canada, to move ahead of us? When Rastaman here have been growing weed up in the mountains for decades, if not longer. We just, I feel, we talk, we make little tentative steps. And I'm speaking this way because I'll be honest with you, sometimes on Nevis, I'm a little frustrated because, of course, we know the power in Nevis is limited, meaning that I can't, for example, decide to Nevis I'm going to go in Parliament and legalize marijuana. I don't have that constitutional authority. So we have to depend on the federal government. And a lot of times I find that we are tentative. And I say that we are tentative in part because CBI money is pouring into Bastia. So you say, man, even if this takes 20 years or 30 years, it's not a big deal because that goose keep laying the egg. What we have not prepared for is the possibility that that goose may stop laying eggs or may lay fewer eggs. And then you're going to have a serious problem in the country. So I think we need to move with greater speed. And I am hopeful that that message came out very clearly from the submissions that came in the Parliament. I think the government acknowledges it and the opposition reinforced it, that we need to move to a diversified economic space in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I believe that those pillars are, as I have suggested them, in terms of where we can go.
Okay, at this point, we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back with more discussions here on Inside the News.
Found the Sound 98.9 FM.
Attention TDC shoppers, the countdown to that day savings is on at all TDC retail stores. This Saturday, 21st December, your that day specialists are making your holiday shopping dreams come true when you shop at the TDC Home and Building Depot, Automotive Division, and shoptdcgroup.com. Enjoy a massive 25% off store-wide. And wait for it, pay no VAT. That's right, double the savings for one day only. Shop around the clock for gifts, gadgets, furniture, appliances, accessories, and everything you need to make this holiday season unforgettable with unbeatable savings. Mark your calendars for Saturday, 21st December, and head to your favorite TDC retail store, where TDC, your VAT Day specialists, are helping you to save even more this holiday season. Terms and conditions apply. See stores for details. TDC, together we succeed.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
People make the world go round.
And we are back here on Inside the News. As per usual, I'm Jermine Abel sitting in. And this morning we have with us Leader of the Opposition and Premier Mark Brantley. And we're having a conversation on national and local issues impacting us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. The budget wrapped up yesterday, so at this point we're just diving into a little bit of that before we transition over to Nevis. Mr. Premier, I have just about two other questions on the budget, the topic of the budget. You have been criticized throughout since you have taken over as Leader of the Opposition for your dual role. But based on your presentation, you have been criticized for not being critical. I don't know if this phrase is correct to say it, but you're not being critical enough of the government's position because you have a dual role. So you're trying to balance that while still trying to. I don't know how to put it this way, but there's no other way to put it. To benefit Nevis as the premier. In your discussions with the government, so that transitioned into the budget. Do you believe that those criticisms are being fair when you as the opposition leader have to debate the budget?
I believe that the criticisms are not fair. But I understand the criticisms because the criticisms flow from what we are accustomed to. This is not my first rodeo. I've been in the parliament there for 17 years, and it's ironic, I started my political life in the parliament as leader of the opposition. But I've said with age and with wisdom that comes from age, I have reformulated my own approach. Opposition in our country traditionally has been a place where the only thing that we are able to do is to advance criticism. The harsher the criticism, the better. The noisier and more boisterous the criticism, the more vulgar the language, the better. People say, boy, he good. That's what we are accustomed to. The hype and the roar. But with the benefit of, as I said, wisdom that comes with age, I have reflected and said, at the end of the day, Jermine, what does it achieve? What can we truly say it achieves? So we go into the house, we cuss each other. We say and use the most derogatory language we can find to talk about each other. In some parliaments around the world, it gets so bad that people end up fighting each other, physically fighting each other. We saw in a recent parliamentary session in a neighboring CARICOM country that one of the opposition members tried to throw the mace out of the window.
He was successful.
Well, okay. Throw the mace to try to stop the debate. At the end of the day, how does that get water into the pipes in Cairn? How does that deal with the escalating cost of food? How does that address electricity outages and shortages that we are having? How does that diversify our economy? And I'm having a similar problem on Nevis because on Nevis we have an opposition. That if you get up and say good morning, they ask you what's good about the morning and they start to cuss. And some people are of the view that that is the role of opposition. Well, I am simply saying to the nation, and maybe I'm wrong. At the end of the day, our people will decide. But every new thing starts with the idea. And I'm saying if in the parliament we are all there sent by people, the people of number 9 have sent me for 17 years to this parliament. Why have they sent me? To come in and cuss? Or have they sent me to lend whatever intellect I have left, whatever energy I have left, to the upliftment and development of the country? I want to put it this way. There was a gentleman on whose advice as a young politician I depended. And I have a radio program on Nevis called On the Mark, which airs every Wednesday night on Vaughan Radio, and has been going now for almost 20 years. And I used to be a vocal opponent of the NRP then in government. But I never offered a criticism without trying to offer a recommendation as to how we can do it better. And the gentleman called me, wise gentleman, and he said to me, boy, you're talking too much. You're giving the government too many ideas. And I thought it was an interesting perspective because I saw myself in opposition as saying the things, articulating the ideas, the solutions, because every opposition should be a government in waiting. So I'm saying, yes, I'm opposed, but I'm also offering a different way. In this budget debate, I talked about us needing a paradigm shift. So the gentleman said to me, I said to the gentleman, so let me ask you something. If you saw a large cruise ship, Icon of the Seas, that size of boat, coming into the Charlestown Pier, and this is the only pier we have in Nevis, and it's going too fast, and you realize that it will slam into the pier and destroy it, wouldn't you sound the alarm and try to stop it. And he tell me, no. They mash up the pier, and when you get in, you fix back the pier. That was his position. I am here to say that that is bad advice. That if I'm in opposition and I see something that can be improved, I said it publicly, for example. When the Prime Minister last year announced this Aspire program saying $1,000 to children between 5 and 18, I scoffed at it. I said, what nonsense. And it was only until the Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Marcus Natter, came to Nevis earlier this year and explained the intricacies of the program that the light went off for me and I realized that this program, if implemented correctly, can be transformational for the country. Because the education, not the $1,000. $1,000 is largely irrelevant to me. The education, the financial education, teaching our children what it means, what debt means, what interest rates look like, what it means to have a mortgage. Because a lot of our people, our adults, have no idea how money works. And that is why people get themselves into all kinds of trouble. Because they go to the various business houses and they say, oh, I could get a toaster for $19.99 a week. Okay. I could get a microwave for $15. Okay. And they take all these credit facilities. They don't realize that the interest rate is 20+%. That the fine print in the hire purchase agreement is if you don't pay, they can come repossess and you still owe the money. They don't realize any of those things. So the idea of financial education. But I come back to the point that the reason why criticism is being leveled at me. I listened to the Honorable Sean Richards in his presentation. Sean has his own style. And as I listened to Sean, especially when Sean spoke about the need for economic diversification, I reflect, and anybody can go back to the tapes. Sean said the same things that I said, except Sean's voice level was different. So I adopted a conversational tone. I said, this needs to be looked at. This is not moving rapidly enough. Talk we're hearing about this for a long time. We now have to move with greater alacrity. Sean said, talk. And they said, boy, Sean is a real opposition. Same argument, same points, just a different decibel and a different tone. So I am saying to our people, listen, we have to listen, because that's the other problem we have in the country, you know. There are people who are going to pass what I say here today and put it out on social media, a clip here and a clip there, and then people are going to respond to the clip. Our people have access to information at their fingertips, but oftentimes they don't seek it out. So they're going to depend on whoever say that Mark say, and then they respond to what whoever said Mark said, as opposed to going to the source and saying, but when FM is live, it's available even after. Let me go and listen myself and hear what was said. So this argument, I think, is unfair, but I understand why, because we have a culture of saying that the only role of the opposition is to cuss. We have a situation in the country where some of those now in opposition were in government before, and through actions or inactions, policies or lack thereof, created some of the real problems we have today. And I hear they talk all the time, where you making noise for, fix it. But while there is that responsibility to fix it, there's also a need to let the public know why the problem arose in the first place. That to me is, a story doesn't start today. A story has a beginning, it has a middle section, and it has an end. Some people want you to start the story at the end and don't want you to talk about why it is you are where you are, and therefore put the difficulties you're experiencing in some context. So I have adopted the approach, and I've said, listen, I'm going to try to lend what ideas I have. If I feel that the Honorable Prime Minister is going down a road that I feel will have detrimental impacts and effects for the country, I'm going to tell him so. I may call him on the phone and tell him so. I may say it right here on Win FM. I may say it in the Parliament, but I will tell him so. But there are two ways that I could tell him so. I can cuss him and call him foolish and dunce and incompetent, or I can say, I suggest that you do it this way, which is a better way. It's all in the question of what the approach is likely to be. And so that is what I've been trying to do. And I think that history will have to be the judge. But my perspective now in terms of politics for whatever life I have left, I told someone the other day, and I think that it is correct to say at my age now, I have more years behind me than ahead of me. And all of us get to that point, if we are fortunate, that we have an inflection point in our lives, and we must decide the energy that we have, should we spend that energy being divisive, abusive, and trying to just spend all our time scoring points? Or should we use that energy to build where we can build, unify on the issues that we can unify on, improve on issues? You take Aspire. When the Cabinet Secretary came and spoke to the Cabinet in Nevis, Dr. Natter, the Federal Cabinet Secretary, we had some recommendations to make in relation to how that program could be improved. And what I find happening is that a lot of us are more inclined to go public and cuss and say how stupid something is, rather than instead saying, all right, this is what you're trying to do. Here's my recommendation as to how you can improve it. And that's the thing. I remember during the COVID-19 pandemic, I called the members of the NRP. They were then together. And I called them to my office and had a meeting with the then leader and the sole member in Parliament. It was the Honourable Cleon Stapleton Simmons at the time. And I asked for their partnership in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic and our response. I said, we were also acutely concerned about this pandemic. It was important for us to have a single voice, that there was no value in government saying one thing and opposition bashing them. And they wrote me back a letter after about a week or two and said, the answer is no. They are not interested in partnering with us. And I am saying to the country that that has been the traditional approach in terms of opposition. Crime happening, God forbid somebody gets killed, let us blame the government. An accident happened claiming the lives of innocent people, let us find a way to blame the government. So an accident happened, we're not going to say people are driving recklessly or JNF doesn't have the proper facilities, that's why people died. And everything that happens, let us find a way to blame the government. And that doesn't advance our country at the end of the day. I am now in a mode where I am about solutions. And I believe when people send us to Parliament, whichever side of the aisle we happen to be on, people have sent us to Parliament. They have put their trust and confidence in us. And they therefore expect us to go in Parliament and to represent them. And I don't know that representing the good people of St. John's and St. Paul's, the people of number 9 in Nevis, is simply me coming to Bastia to cuss somebody. So I started my budget presentation when I presented this week, Tuesday. And I said, for those who are tuning in for some cussing, they could lock off now. If, however, you're tuned in because you want to hear reasoned, sensible debate, you want to hear where we are and where I think we ought to be going, you want to hear an alternative, you want to know when I say we need a paradigm shift in the country, what that paradigm shift should look like, then definitely, please, I encourage you to continue to listen. And I spoke for 3 hours, 2 hours and 57 minutes on that. So the criticism out there, we live in a democracy. The democracy is noisy, it's raucous. It's one of the most robust democracies, I think, in the region. With this show and 100 others like it, people online amplifying whatever they have to say. Some of it makes sense. Some of it doesn't make sense, but I respect everybody's right to say what they want to say. At the end of the day, however, I'm on a path where I feel that at this stage in my life, what can I contribute to help to build the country? What can I contribute to help to solve the problems in the country? And my children and grandchildren, through the grace of God, will be the beneficiary, I hope, of the efforts that I am making today. So if there are people out there who are upset with that approach, who feel that that is somehow abdicating the responsibility, then I say to them that we need a paradigm shift in our politics as well. And I'm going to continue to offer my ideas where I can, offer my criticisms when I can, but if I'm offering criticisms, I believe that I should also be offering a better way. I should be saying to the government and saying to our people that there is a better way that we can do this. And that is the approach that I'm taking, and that is the path in which I now find myself at this stage.
Okay, and finally on this whole budget topic, just quickly before we take a break, social programs. This has long been one of the biggest talking points for well over a decade. Do you think that the budget has gone far enough to address the social ills impacting us here in St. Kitts and Nevis? And I know during the budget presentations, you spoke about it as well, and the Prime Minister addressed it, and some of the other members of Parliament. The issue of inflation is somewhat imported, or all of it is imported to an extent. Do you believe that the budget has gone far enough to address those issues, as well as the fact that many people were looking out for a double salary when we pay just about $250 million to about $300 million in social, we fund about $250 to $300 million in social programs. And on the flip side to that, the IMF has also been calling, to an extent, for St. Kitts and Nevis to slightly shift away or wean people off of these social programs. So I think that the general question here is, did the budget hit the mark in addressing this issue, and where do we go 2025, 2026 as we go forward in terms of removing or reducing that $250 million figure?
So, Abel, do you realize that $250 million, $250 to $300 million in social programs is 1/4 of the budget?
Yep.
1/4 of our national budget is spent on social programs. That is unheard of. And yet, our people continue to remonstrate and demonstrate that they didn't get a double, they didn't get enough. When this Aspire program of $1,000 to our children was announced, I heard people saying, well, not for the children, what for me? And I am going to say something which I hope is not controversial. I don't really blame our people, because we, the politicians, have contributed to that mentality. And I got some blows. I don't know if you recall. Was it 2 years ago when I said I did not believe in this automatic double salary story?
Yes.
Oh, man, they wanted to tar and feather me. But my argument was simple. You give everybody a double salary. It's not based on any performance. It's not based on whether you come to work early or you commit or you operate. You could be in the rum shop down the road there, down in McKnight right now, drinking rum when you're supposed to be working. Will you get the same double salary as the diligent worker? What that says to me, therefore, is that the double salary can act as a disincentive for hard-working public servants. Because they say, well, at the end of the day, I get in the same as Johnny, and Johnny don't come to work. And what I advocated instead was something that was performance-based. Not that I'm against bonus payments, but something that's performance-based, where Tom, who is on time and diligent and works hard and is reliable and dependable, can look forward to a bonus based on that. And Johnny, who don't come to work and have more sick leave than work, no, he can't get no bonus because he did not perform. Around the world and in the private sector, that's how things go. I don't know nobody in the private sector automatically gets pay, additional money. But that created a huge stir. And even my fellow politicians, some of them jumped on the bandwagon. Cuss Mark, Mark Brantley got money, so you don't care about poor people and this and that. So we have contributed to this that we are seeing. And what it happens is when people now get to a stage where they are entitled, you have a situation now where, listen, you get in your electricity subsidy every month, so what? I still want me double. You get in healthcare subsidized. What is it you're paying at JNF or at Alexandra Hospital? Do you know at Alexandra Hospital, we just had to look at our fees in Nevis. You pay the grand total of $20 EC a day to stay at the Alexandra Hospital. That includes 3 meals, your bed, your medication, and of course the attention of the doctors and nurses. $20 EC a day. When we had called C50 Some people ask if they could stay at the hospital because the cheapest place in the whole world to stay is the Alexandra Hospital. Can they come in instead of going to a guest house or a hotel? Can they just stay up at Alexandra? 3 meals a day, 20 EC dollars. But people take all of those things for granted. They don't see that there's a cost involved, that the state is picking up the tab, so to speak. And so for them, that is nothing. The subsidy on electricity, that's nothing. A country like ours, it is unsustainable to spend $300 million a year on social programs, to spend 1/4 of your budget each year on social programs. And I have been a harsh critic of the federal government in particular, because over here, especially things like the electricity subsidy, there is no means testing. There is no income cutoff. So whether you are, I don't know whether salaries are paid, but whether you are the CEO of TDC, making $30,000 or $40,000 a month, whatever that CEO may make, or you are work up at the factory, making $400 a week, you got the same subsidy. That can't be right. Because there are people who are at a certain level where the state should not be extending its hand to them. Social programs, by their nature, are intended to be and ought to be directed at those in the community that need that hand up, that need that assistance. They should be focused on that single mother. And let me put it this way, if our social programs were more focused, you may well find that we spend less money, but we get more into the hands of those who really need it. I wouldn't be offering no subsidy to people who work at Central Bank and who is the top echelons at the big commercial houses on the island. Why should they get a subsidy? They are in an income bracket where they can manage. The people who need the subsidy, the people who need the help, are the people at the bottom. Those are the people that you need to work with. I had the same argument in relation to this laptop program. I said, why are you giving the general manager or the CEO at Marriott or at Park Hyatt, his or her child, a laptop when they probably have 2 or 3 at home already? That laptop should be going into Newtown. It should be going into McKnight. It should be going into the hands of those students who are coming from homes that don't have the financial capacity, and therefore what it serves to do is to level up, bring them up, not give people who don't need it. And so I feel that part of the problem we have is that, and it's a lazy thing to do, because you just say, across the board, nobody has to do any analysis. So, just across the board. Whereas, if you had a more nuanced approach, you could bring down that amount dramatically. I am here speculating. Please, people, don't judge me too harshly, but it's a speculation on my part. That 250 to 300 million could probably be reduced by at least $100 million. Simply by redefining, reassessing, and having a greater nuance in terms of who can benefit. And once you've done that, you realize, hey, I may actually be able to give those folks at the bottom a bit more. And so bring them up faster. Because the money that I was throwing away up here, I can redistribute that. And that to me is what needs to happen. But as I said, it's a lazy approach because nobody has to do any analysis. You just say, all right, there are 1,000 customers for Skelec, all 1,000 get whatever it's available. Regardless of the reality that 200 out of that 1,000, 400 out of that 1,000 may actually not need it at all. And that, I think, is what we need to look at. But the current practice is unsustainable. And again, I said in the budget, we need to start to have real conversations with our people. Real conversations with our people. The politicians and the society as a whole, we have coddled bad behavior. We have encouraged foolish behavior. And we let people take their actions, and then we say the consequences of those actions are for somebody else to deal with. So a man is going out there, he's at the rum shop, And he boasting while he banged 2 Guinness with the partners that he got 13, 14 children. And he said, boy, he's a Don. He's a Don. Don Dada. Gallus. But you ask him, how much of the 14 picnic you're supporting? None. And then those mothers now are running around, come to government, they want the social program, they want that. But nobody is prepared to bail the cat and say to that man, you are irresponsible. In fact, you are foolish for what you're doing. We let them, in fact, when they say 14 picnic me having, everybody daps them and say, Dan, you're gallus. Right? We are not having those conversations. Because if you're a politician, you say those things, people say, oh, like poor people and, like whatever. But if some of those practices that we see happening, if we don't discourage them, if we don't with one voice say that is not the way, if we don't seek to have the kinds of honest, open conversation with our people, that poverty, it's just a cycle, it will continue. Because some decisions that people are taking will ensure that they remain in poverty. And so we need to have that conversation. And maybe again, because I'm at a stage now where I can say certain things, I have had the benefit of living for a while and observing for a while, and I hope that people take this in the context in which it is intended, that what I'm trying to do is to help.
All right, Mr. Premier, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come right back and continue. We'll shift over to Nevis when we get back.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Attention TDC shoppers! The countdown to that day savings is on at all TDC retail stores. This Saturday, 21st December, your that day specialists are making your holiday shopping dreams come true when you shop at the TDC Home and Building Depot, Automotive Division, and shoptdcgroup.com. Enjoy a massive 25% off store-wide. And wait for it, pay no VAT. That's right, double the savings for one day only. Shop around the clock for gifts, gadgets, furniture, appliances, accessories, and everything you need to make this holiday season unforgettable with unbeatable savings. Mark your calendars for Saturday, 21st December, and head to your favorite TDC retail store, where TDC, your VAT Day specialists, are helping you to save even more this holiday season. Terms and conditions apply. See stores for details. TDC, together we succeed.
People make the world go
And we are back here on Inside the News. We're having a discussion with Premier and Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Mark Brantley. So, Mr. Brantley, we're going over to Nevis now. You passed the budget recently for 2025. You've been receiving a number of criticisms from Nevis, including the opposition and people on the ground there, regarding several unfinished projects, and you've been given a bit of a comment on some of them throughout the year. What actually is or are the challenges that's impacting those projects? For example, we know the hospital project has long been one of the biggest obstacles for your administration. We also have the airport project that is also ongoing, or is there still some discussion surrounding that? And you mentioned geothermal earlier. Can you go beyond this discussion, of people complaining and so forth? What exactly is the issue impacting these projects?
Correct, because I believe in journalistic integrity and accuracy, that there are not a number of projects in Nevis that are unfinished. The only project in Nevis that is an unfinished project at this point is the hospital. All the other projects on which we've embarked are done, or the phase to which we committed is done. So I want to make that very clear. The only project on the island of Nevis that is unfinished and has remained unfinished now since we started it back in the end of 2017, so it's been going for about 7 years, is the hospital project. And that hospital project, I've explained time and time again, has been a multitude of issues. We went, I think, rather well until we had the interruption due to COVID. And then we have not restarted it because we realized that we had to reconfigure the internal workings of the hospital. And we had some time. We then had to get some quantity surveys. We hired a chap over here in St. Kitts who gave us a song and dance for several months. Wasted nearly a year with him until we finally had to sever that and go someplace else. I think we're in court now with that individual to try to recover our money. So we had some setbacks. We have said very clearly that we are committed to finishing that new wing of the hospital, and that we intend to embark on it in earnest this coming year, 2025. We had made that commitment for 2024, but shifted, and again, we were very open and transparent with the public. We shifted our attention to the Culturama 50 celebration, bearing in mind that we understood that we would have thousands of people descending on the island. We said, you know what, let's put our efforts instead into the venues and the infrastructure that would support Culturama, and that's what we did, and we were very open about it. I am not here to make excuses, because I think in any administration, there are things that we can celebrate and there are things that we're not as proud of. And I'm not proud of the fact that that hospital wing has taken the time that it has taken. However, I do know what we are committed to. I do know the work that has gone in, even while there's been no construction. And I do know the commitment that exists to have that facility proceed to completion this year. What, however, I would say to the people of Nevis and the wider Federation is that healthcare is not a building. Let me say that again. Healthcare is not a building. The current Alexandra Hospital in Nevis has been improved considerably in terms of what is on offer, in terms of the doctors that are available to us in Nevis now, the level of specialties that are available. Nevis now has gone to a point where we even have obstetrics and gynecology on the districts. That is, if you go to the clinics in Nevis, in the villages, you're pregnant, you don't need to go to any private doctor, you don't need to go to the hospital. You can go right there and see a doctor, an OBGYN, because we've assigned OBGYNs to the districts. That is unprecedented. We have in Nevis a state-of-the-art 128 slice CT scan. In fact, the federal government has only just acquired one, prompting Dr. Drew in the parliament to say that St. Kitts will catch up to Nevis in the next few weeks. That has been in operation in Nevis now, I believe, for nearly 2 years. 128 slice brand new Philips CT scan, taking our diagnostic capacity to the next level on the island of Nevis. I believe when we acquired it, only Grenada in the Caribbean had one similar. We have invested in new ambulances. We've invested in state-of-the-art mammogram machines that can allow us now to detect breast cancer at a very early stage. In fact, last year we launched an unprecedented program where we offered free mammogram screening at the hospital. We ended up with 399 women who took advantage. I'm not sure why we didn't get to 400, but 399 women that took advantage. So when we look at the provision and delivery of healthcare, we've launched the Federation's first emergency dispatch system, trained individuals, invested in equipment. They're now working out of our CCTV command center, where when you call now 911, you have a commitment for a response within the accepted international standards. Launch the program there. That program succeeds as a pilot, and St. Kitts may follow suit. All of these efforts have happened and continue to happen. This is the month of December. I believe it was in the month of November. We had the first corneal transplant ever done in the history of St. Kitts and Nevis. Done right at Alexandra Hospital. We have had spinal surgery done at Alexandra Hospital. We have an assortment of doctors and specialities. We have plastic surgery. For the first time in the history of Alexandra Hospital, we have 3 surgeons on staff. Never happened before. Obstetrics and gynecology, internists. What do they call the doctor that deals with children? Pediatrician. Surgeons. Plastic surgeon. Orthopedic surgeon. All of these services are available at our hospital. Paid for and supported by the government. So I want to make the point that notwithstanding the wing of the hospital has been delayed, the services, the diagnostic tools, the ambulance service, the dispatch service, all of those have been upgraded to a level where I can say confidently that healthcare on the island of Nevis is the best that it has ever been. I am not saying that to somehow say that we can abandon the ambition to do the wing. I'm simply saying that notwithstanding that the wing has not been completed, we have invested significantly in upgrading the standard of care that's available on the island of Nevis. But in terms of other projects, the water taxi facility, done. The Mondo facility is done, the phase that we committed to. The Newcastle police station, done. The new Treasury building in town, done. The CCTV rollout, CCTV command center, done. Lawrencetown Parry marketing center at agriculture, done. Upgrades to our abattoir, done. Upgrades to our veterinary clinic, done. We have delivered on the projects. The Indian Castle Fruit Orchard, done. All of these are significant projects that we would have done. In Gingerland, we have the Freeman, is it David Freeman Center of Excellence, done. The cultural village, done. The cultural complex, done. All of these. NEPAC, which was in terrible shape, we repaired, done. So the airport project, you mentioned that has not yet started. So it would be, I think, again, inaccurate to say that that's an unfinished project. You haven't yet started it. We have indicated that we intend to hopefully start that project in the new year. The geothermal project has been languishing and lingering for a long time. I spoke about that in my opening. And we are anticipating that we can move forward. But the geothermal project has really been an issue of money, not having the resources. But I think that if you listen to the opposition in Nevis, nothing is happening on the island, no development on the island. The island is at a standstill. But yet, Social Security is reporting that the island of Nevis has the highest number of employees in the history of the island. Social Security is reporting that we have the highest wages in the history of the island being paid out. They're reporting that we have more jobs than people, than workers. And that gap, which runs between 300 and 500, is being filled by individuals working more than one job. The hotel sector has been doing incredibly well. Our tourism and development levy, 2%, has increased exponentially from where it was to where it is now. Our tax revenue, our VAT, all the indicators are performing better. More people are going off to school with assistance from the government. We have a program, in addition to all the scholarships that are advertised, we also have a program where we offer assistance to students. We've invested, as I've indicated, in healthcare. We've invested in terms of education. We've introduced things like Mandarin in our schools. Could you imagine that in Nevis now, young primary and young high schoolers are speaking Mandarin? We've just introduced conversational Spanish in our primary schools. We are about to introduce music. We have invested significantly, but again, if you hear the refrain, and I invite the people of St. Kitts, Come over. Have a look for yourself. When you come, go to the Malcolm Gishard Park. Go down to the Pinnies. See what we've done at Pinnies Beach, where you now have 8 or 9 restaurants. You have your choice of restaurants and bar. It's analogous to what you have at the Strip. And we're trying to create an elevated experience there. Have a look for yourself. See for yourself. Drive the roads. Nevis has some of the best roads in the region. And I am not even shy about saying that because I visit the region. Some of the best roads in the region are on the island of Nevis. And the connectivity that you have in Nevis, how the island is laid out, the grid of the roads. Electricity, we bought not 1, not 2, but 3 gen sets in the last 10 years. Water, we invested in new water distribution across the entire island. About 7 years ago, Nevis looked like the whole island was under construction. We replaced all the old water mains. All them old iron pipes are no more on the island of Nevis. Brand new polyurethane pipes, and we increased the size of the pipes, the circumference, so that we no longer have low pressure issues on the island of Nevis, low water pressure. Then we invested millions of dollars in new storage. We invested millions of dollars in water filtration in Hamilton to ensure that we treat water to make it potable and safe for drinking. Now we invest in almost 10 million EC dollars, 3.4 million US dollars in more drilling. And I reported on the findings thus far. So the island has been moving, and we have been investing, in my view, in what a country needs for sustainability. You need water, you need roads, you need electricity, you need that basic infrastructure. Now we're going to try to build out our airport. And we have had now 3 public consultations. The EIA has been done, and it has been made public now for, I think, over a month. And we have engaged with the public about this airport. Nothing that we do is done in secret. Nothing that we do. So the island of Nevis has quietly, in my humble opinion, become a model of transparency and a model of investments in sustainability for the region in terms of what we've been able to manage with the limited resources that we have. And so I invite that debate. I really do invite that debate because, you see, when the criticisms of my administration come, I sometimes feel that the opposition that is making the most noise in Nevis forget that they had a turn at bat. They were in the crease at one point, and all they made duck. Now they come and they say I'm scoring too slow, but I'm still in the wicket, and I am hitting a 6 here and a 4 there and taking a quick single here and there. But they cussing me when all of them made a duck. They had a chance because they were in government. And what did they do when they were in government? What did they do? It must tell you something about the opposition in Nevis, that whenever they speak about accomplishments, they go back 30 odd years to the coming of the 4 seasons and talk about the great Sir Simeon Daniel. But Sir Simeon Daniel lost office in 1992. That's 1992 till now, 32 years ago. Since 1992, Sir Simeon lost office. And they had a second turn at bat from 2006 until 2013. And it was, I believe, the most disastrous period in the history of the island of Nevis. So, here we are. And I believe that the record speaks for itself. And if you're going to challenge the record of the CCM in government, then you must put your record and let us compare them. Because I believe by any standard, based on the limited resources we have available to us, Nevis has moved in leaps and bounds.
Okay, Mr. Premier, this is the last segment of the program. We're at the bottom of the hour. Let us go beyond the talk of politics and so forth. Let us look at the the geopolitical environment impacting St. Kitts and Nevis. And I want you to, go a little bit deeper in so that people can understand the implications of everything. I also want to say that for those listening, if you want to engage the Premier, you can call in, but be reminded and be respectful that you might not agree with his opinions on certain factors or what he's been saying, but we respect his office and his portfolio. Just before we jump into that, though, a question was asked The Prime Minister, if you could just quickly respond, the Prime Minister did mention during the budget that VAT will be reduced to 13% next year for the first 6 months of the year. How is this going to be impacting Nevis, and will that 13% apply to Nevis as well, in light of the fact that Nevis has already passed its budget?
Right. So again, for those following the budget debate, in my response, I actually criticized the approach that was taken by Dr. Drew and his administration, because there was no consultation on that particular issue. And so we would have passed the budget 2 weeks ago, which assumed that the VAT rate would be 17%, because that is the VAT rate set by law. 2 weeks later, we learn, with the rest of the world, that the VAT rate has been reduced from 17 to 13 for the first 6 months. Clearly, that is going to have an impact, we anticipate, on our VAT receipts. And the reason why I think more than ever consultation is required between Basti and Charlestown is because, as we know, St. Kitts is not nearly as dependent on tax revenue, as I have pointed out, because St. Kitts depends on CBI revenue. So we on Nevis, on the other hand, are heavily dependent on our tax revenue. And that, therefore, will have to be something that we will have to look carefully at. But I have heard some people making some noise about VAT rate and whether it's the same rate. VAT is a national tax. And so whatever the rate that is set nationally, that is the rate for VAT. It's not as if on Nevis you could decide that you're going to charge 10% VAT while St. Kitts is charging 13 or 17. Whatever the rate is, it's one rate across the board. So those in Nevis will now pay 13% as well for the first 6 months. Question is, with proper consultation, with proper discussion, Nevis could have re-looked, if you will. Our technocrats would have an opportunity to look at our financial forecast and to say, all right, if this is anticipated to be done, come budget time in St. Kitts, then what do we do? So what do we do in the future? We have 2 budget sessions. Should we wait and see what the federal government does in terms of its budget and then we do the budget in Nevis? I don't think that's necessary. I think that, again, as we approach governance in a mature way, those conversations should happen. I'm not trying to take any thunder away from the Prime Minister. I know that sometimes in a budget you want to announce whatever you want to announce, but there has to be that level of confidence and that level of dialogue that we say, listen, if we're going to make a decision about a national tax like VAT, which will have an impact in Nevis, then the NIA should know so that we can make provisions accordingly. So that was the point that I made in the Parliament in my response. So I believe it will have an effect. My team is even now looking to try to do an analysis as to what that effect may look like.
Okay, geopolitics here. The Trump administration, which is coming into office in just about a month's time, has been talking about tariffs. And I think you touched a little bit about this in your budget presentation. The implications for us in St. Kitts and Nevis, we in the media, we know all of the fineries and the finer details. But what does this mean for the ordinary man in the street, including the fisher folk who just go on the sea, ply the trade, catch, come in, sell, back out there, do this as a cycle? And you've also been talking about the fact that a lot of people here in St. Kitts and Nevis do not, and we in the media have also seen it, do not necessarily pay much attention to what goes on internationally, right? And then we complain that it's the government's responsibility, it's the government's fault. Can you just explain to the public what this tariff simply mean for us here in St. Kitts and on Nevis as well?
Short answer is one that you're not going to like. I don't know. I don't know because I think that we will have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see, one, what President Trump actually does, and two, what the implications of what he does will look like. It appears that this tariff situation is aimed at large competitors of the United States, specifically China and countries like those. Some pundits argue that it will lead to a higher cost of living in the United States. If that is true, because we import so much from the United States, then it's likely that we too will import that higher cost of living in goods and services here in St. Kitts and Nevis. But I believe it is too early to say. President Trump, for example, candidate Trump, for example, talked about reducing the cost of living and reducing inflation. And that appeared to have been a big issue in the campaign. I'm already hearing some pundits say now that President-elect Trump is backing away from that commitment because he realizes, and no doubt the people around him realizes, that there is not a lot that you can do because there are factors now, the global economy and the way it functions, there are factors now where all countries in the world import some level of inflation, including the great United States, because so much, I have here an iPhone. Apple is an American company, but how much of this iPhone comes out of the US in terms of manufacturing? The answer is very little. Case may be made somewhere, the body made somewhere, the electronics made someplace else, right? You have products in here from Africa, you have products from Taiwan, chips, etc. So I am reluctant to wade in because I believe that those far more educated in such matters than I are still unsure of what this is going to mean, whether it actually is going to be implemented, and if so, what the effects are likely to be. One possibility, as I've said, is that it could lead to another spiral in terms of cost of living, but I am hopeful that good sense will prevail and that the United States, in its geopolitical, because this is really not just about economics, this is also about geopolitics. These policies are intended to see, insofar as United States and China are concerned, who will emerge as a global power in terms of economics. And so there's some geopolitics involved there as well. But I try my best now to not wade in too deep in areas that I think are still very murky and very uncertain as to where it's going to go. What I will say, however, is that our people need to pay attention. We need to listen to the news, not just here locally, not just what we see on Facebook. We need to listen, watch CNN, watch Al Jazeera, watch BBC, watch wherever you can watch. But pay attention, because too many of us here feel that what happens in the outer world has no impact whatsoever on us, and you'll be very wrong if you felt that way. Because when you pay more on the bus here now, that's because oil prices have been trending up. The cost of parts and repair parts have been trending up. Oil isn't made here, parts aren't made here. All of that is imported. And we have to recognize that what happens outside there has an impact inside. Oil prices, so goes the price of oil, so goes the price of food, so goes the price of production, so goes the price of services. And then, of course, the cost of food and the supply chain issues that we have developed after COVID, from which the world has not yet recovered. All of those are factors that go into what determines the price of a pound of fruit.
I want to put you on the spot one more time regarding Trump and his decisions, President-elect Trump and his decisions before he comes into office. And this has some level of implications for the Caribbean region. There was a report recently in multiple international outlets that Trump is in discussions and considering territories in the Caribbean region to house deportees. The report did mention Grenada and the Bahamas, and those are closer to the CARICOM region, for their implication for them to possibly house deportees.
I don't know the deportees. I think you meant immigrants who are trying to get into the U.S.
Well,
because deportees would normally be sent to the country from which they came.
Yes, but those countries, just using a random example, Guyana, Barbados, wherever it is, they don't want to accept those deportees. I'm just using those countries as an example. And he is in discussions with third-party countries to accept these deportees. And CARICOM member states have been mentioned, even though they've now come out to say that, listen, we're not going to take them. But again, geopolitics-wise, what do you believe, how from a perspective as a former foreign affairs minister, what should CARICOM countries do? How should we view this, especially us here in St. Kitts and Nevis? Because let's say if one accepts these deportees and going forward, they do remain there, the possibility exists that they can access free movements. I don't know whether or not restrictions will be placed on them. What does this mean for the CARICOM community?
So I think you have heaped speculation on top of hyperbole and asked me now to opine. And it's a very dangerous practice because President-elect Trump has said a lot of things. I mentioned the cost of living, and to say that I'm told now that he's backtracking. We understand he would have gone through a campaign and that every day there's a headline about what Trump is going to do, what Trump is going to do. I am of the view, and I was there as part of the first Donald Trump administration. I was foreign minister then. That we ought to give him, as he comes into office in January, an opportunity to actually make decisions, not talking heads saying what he claims he will do, but to actually make decisions. Why I say that is because ideas are thrown out all the time. I want to do this, I want to do that. You remember he was going to build a wall to keep Mexicans from coming to the U.S. Where's the wall? Didn't happen. So if you had asked me when that announcement was made to start to pontificate about this wall, it would have been an exercise in futility because no wall actually emerged after. And so I have been reluctant to engage in a lot of these matters because I'm not sure sometimes what is real in terms of actual policy prescription that is going to happen and what is mere rhetoric at this point. And so I am waiting, frankly. I want to see Donald Trump inaugurated in January. I want to hear and see for myself what policies he puts in place. And then I think I want to come back to WinFM and you could ask me those questions again. But for now, the idea, for example, of CARICOM countries accepting deportees from other, it just sounds so far-fetched to me that I'm not even sure I want to waste time talking about those things because I don't see how any country in the region will accept deportees from the United States or from anywhere else who are not their own people. So for St. Kitts Nevis to say, okay, you have deportees to Guyana, Jamaica, Barbados, send them to St. Kitts Nevis. Deportees tend to be criminals. Why would any sensible country do that? So I say that to say that I am going to wait, and if God is so good to grant me life until next year, and you're so kind to invite me back, we can come back and we can have a discussion about what Trump is actually doing, as opposed to what talking heads are saying Trump may do.
Okay. Well, you responded to the question, but I wouldn't prolong that particular topic because there's so many news reports out there. But coming back home to St. Kitts and Nevis, the big issue right now facing us, and it has broader implications because we're very dependent on the Citizenship by Investment program, and I know there's a litigation matter. But what is the implications for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis for the possibility of this ongoing issue facing us here when it comes to the matter of the Martinez and the CBI program here in St. Kitts and Nevis? I know it's under litigation and it's in the matters in court and so forth, but the broader implications for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Well, my understanding is that the RICO suit has been discontinued. I'm not sure if my understanding is correct.
But
so
from I think the document that we saw, it did indicate I think St. Lucia was the matter surrounding St. Lucia was withdrawn. So yeah, there's some clarification is needed there.
Okay, well, I was just told that the RICO lawsuit has been discontinued. But in any event, these are some of the reputational risks that we face and which I think have to be confronted. And that's why when I made the statement, I said these programs have been under attack from individuals within and without, from institutions, from countries, and from blocks of countries like the EU. And that is why I feel that we need to pivot in a very serious way to what I have termed value added in the CBI program, to move away from what we currently have as the model, and while we still continue to encourage new entrants into the program to focus on who we already have. That to me is where we will survive and make a difference and be able to diversify, even within the program, be able to diversify it. And so that the implications are, I think, obvious. There are some serious reputational issues there. The lawsuit that was there named certain individuals the current foreign minister, who was former Prime Minister Dr. Douglas. It names current member of the opposition, was former Prime Minister Dr. Harris. It names some companies, but in terms of public officials, and that's always troublesome when public officials are named. But of course, we also understand that lawsuits are what they are, and they still have to be proven in a court of law. And so I can decide tomorrow that I'm going to sue you and make as many allegations as I want to about you and publish it as far and wide as possible. That doesn't necessarily mean that I've won the case, that a judge has adjudicated and found that what I have alleged is true, and that there has been some wrongdoing. So all I've said when I've been asked about this is that those who are caught up in this whole MSR thing need to get lawyers and need to understand where they're going. I believe I use the colloquial expression. I say, if you have cocoa sun, rain will come. So you need to deal with that. I am thankful that the island of Nevis and my government is who brought MSR in to make movies. I keep emphasizing that. And I will always say publicly and privately that MSR delivered on what we asked them to do. They made movies in Nevis. In fact, the relationship was quite fine until Dr. Harris in St. Kitts looked over and decided that he preferred to have MSR in St. Kitts and set out on a campaign of wooing MSR to come over. That's when CBI was dangled. MSR didn't know anything about CBI. CBI was not part of what we discussed. CBI cut into the equation because the federal government wanted to have MSR relocate to St. Kitts and say, leave Nevis, man, come over here. This is a big country, this is a big part, this is what things are going on, and we'll give you this, that, and the other. Many people don't know, for example, that MSR was supposed to buy La Valley and Kittishan Hill. They eventually ended up buying OTI. And in fact, I was lambasted. In fact, just yesterday, I shared an email that came to my attention where Janice Daniel Hodge, leader of NRP, wrote to Martinez and said to Martinez, in part, my post questioned whether our premier dropped the ball by not negotiating the necessary arrangements to keep MSR in Nevis. So when MSR left us, I was a laughing stock. NRP laughed at me. Timothy laughed at me. They say, look at him, he's so stupid, he bring people here. He bring a girlfriend here all the way from wherever he bring her from, and he lose her. Other man take her away. And that was the running joke that they had on me. But maybe all that glitters wasn't gold. And you take away my girlfriend and then you start to complain, say she can't cook and she can't wash. But I was happy with her. I used to do the cooking and the washing. You go and you take her away from me and now you start to cuss and say, you bring her here. Well, I bring her here for my purposes. We had an arrangement to make movies. And nobody had asked St. Kitts and the federal government to intervene in that. But Timothy Harris decided he wanted to do everything in his power to get at Nevis, to get at me, and to woo MSR away. And MSR packed up lock, stock, and barrel. Cat, dog, computer, stapler, everything, and moved to St. Kitts. And that's when the bottom fell out of the barrel, and you started to have confusion.
So what's the relationship now? Is Nevis still engaging MSR to continue in terms of making movies on the island of Nevis?
No, because MSR has left Nevis. MSR formed an entity called MSR SK Limited and moved over to St. Kitts. They left Nevis. They left us. They went to, I assume, what was appeared to be a better situation. I remember Mr. Martinez saying to me that the offer was too good to pass up. And so I said, well, if it's too good, it's too good. You got to do what you got to do as a businessman. So he came to St. Kitts. When he came over here now, I think is when the problems developed. And so I have said publicly that it is a matter of great pride for me that there have been no allegations against me or against anybody in my government in Nevis, because we delivered what we said we would deliver to MSR, and MSR delivered what it said it would deliver to us, which was making movies. All the CBI and what is happening in the CBI and all that now is a Bastia matter, because Bastia is who went after him and wooed him to come over. So they're dealing with that, but I think the reputational fallout of that is real, and we have to manage that as best as we can. And part of managing that, again, is for us to look with some alacrity to rearrange and reemphasize and retool our CBI program.
Okay, we have just about 7 minutes left, and I have a couple of questions that were sent in to me. One, impact of global events. How do global economic conditions such as rising inflation or geopolitical tensions influence the budgetary decisions for Nevis in 2025? And also, how does the 2025 budget align with the broader goals of sustainable development for the Federation based on your budget?
Well, that's tough. But what I would suggest in response is that whoever asked that question, they make the time to listen to the budget presentation in Nevis, because we did lay out the regional dynamics, the international dynamics, the forecast from the IMF, forecast from the ECCB, for example, and where we were in that context. We set out what our objectives are, and our budget is one about creating jobs and advancing the economy in Nevis, diversifying and advancing the economy. So all of that was set out, and that was set out against the backdrop of an increasingly hostile global environment. We recognized and spoke to the war in Ukraine, the impact of that. We recognized and spoke to the ongoing conflagration in the Middle East, and the fact that that war that started out as Israel's response to an attack on Israel, a terrorist attack on Israel by Hamas, and that has now expanded into Lebanon. It has now expanded into Syria, and it appears that that appetite for war continues to expand. If, God forbid, Iran were to engage fully, then you have the potential for some serious implications internationally in terms of oil and the price of oil. We spoke about Venezuela and the difficulties there with Maduro, and the fact that instability in Venezuela, of course, Venezuela being one of the world's leading oil producers, is also impacting. We spoke about Russia, again, one of the world's leading oil producers, and the embargo that has been established in relation to Russia in some respects. And that, again, all of these are factors that we here in Bastia and Charlestown have to be mindful of, because they have the implication of higher cost of living and a more difficult environment within which to do business for us as part of this global village.
Okay, in terms of the long-term vision for Nevis and the financial sector, Nevis was an offshore sector. What's the vision for that in 2025 and beyond?
We continue to grow. I'm pleased to say that we have seen growth year over year of about 15%. I've set a target of 50% for the team. They say I'm being overly ambitious, but I think that there is a possibility for tremendous growth. We are seeing some challenges facing some of our competitors like the BVI, which we don't have. And so we feel that some business is going to flow from some of those jurisdictions into Nevis. Nevis celebrated 40 years of financial services this year. We're a well-regulated, well-regarded jurisdiction with stable laws, stable government, good judicial system. And I feel that we have all of the hallmarks, including pricing, that will allow us to compete effectively in the global environment. So that is part of our diversification effort on the island, to ramp up our efforts to attract more business, but also to attract new players into that space, new companies coming in as service providers. So we are quite bullish on financial services on Nevis at the moment.
Okay, they sent in a lot of questions, but we're running out of time. Just quickly, the issue of crime and violence, and there's a connection between sports and it benefiting the young people and using that rather as a means to tackling the crime problem. From your perspective, what's Nevis going to be doing regarding sports, and how is it the broader St. Kitts and Nevis can benefit significantly from including or putting more funds towards sports and developing the young people in the arena of sports?
Well, a lot has been happening, and I'm very proud of my government's progress in sports. I want to commend publicly the Honourable Troy Libert. He has been doing an excellent job. When we invested in the Mondo track, for example, we were criticized, because everything we do, we are criticized. But I want Nevisians to consider that prior to the investment in that IAAF certified 9-lane Mondo track facility, at the time, the only 9-lane facility in the region, and at the time using Mondo's latest technology, that prior to that our children ran on grass, many of them barefooted. And we were still asking those same athletes to then step up when they came to the Kim Collins Stadium in St. Kitts or went to Carifta. That Mondo facility has added immeasurably to the confidence and the training capabilities for our youth. In fact, if anybody had doubts about that facility, now that the Kim Collins Stadium is going through its remake and renovation, last year, the Inter-High was held in Nevis. Couldn't have happened if we had not had the foresight to invest in that facility. So that's significant, that investment. We are also now seeing a rekindling of football. And we just had the primary school championships in Nevis. I have not myself seen crowds like that in some time. Crowds came out. We want to thank the National Bank. They were sponsors, and it was an excellent partnership. You have seen the inter-primary, which we call the Mini Olympics Sports Day in Nevis. In fact, we get a half holiday in Nevis for that because of how massive it is. It is still the single largest sporting event in the entire country, where the primary schools in Nevis vie for supremacy. We are seeing the development now of swimming. In fact, we are in close communication with the Aquatics Federation to see if we can invest in the relevant facility to allow swimming because, again, most of the swimmers are from Nevis. And that came out of a program. Many people marvel at the fact that we live on an island and most of our people can't swim. So coming out of that, we actually introduced 5 years ago a program in Nevis in our schools to teach our youth how to swim. And from that program, we're now seeing these youngsters emerging who are swimming competitively. So I just want the public to understand how good policies impact. So now we talk about Jonathan Essien and we talk about, oh dear, what's his name now? The young 15-year-old who went off to the Olympics.
Troy,
Nisbet,
yeah.
Exactly. Troy Nisbet. So we talk about these youngsters and we say, oh, hurrah, hurrah, but we don't look at the policy prescriptions that went into making it possible for those youngsters now to go off. And those policy prescriptions we started about 5-6 years ago when we introduced swimming. More and more people in Nevis, those in school but also older people, are now swimming because we have introduced a policy of bringing in people to teach. And we have now, what they call it when you train the trainer. So we now have local trainers now who can deliver. And St. Kitts is already on board, and we're doing well. But I think the epicenter of swimming and competition is still, for the moment, on the island of Nevis because of the development that we've done there. So in terms of sport, I agree with you. Sport has a number of benefits. Health, camaraderie, building the right type of temperament, giving our young people something, an outlet for energy, and, of course, the capacity to use their talents to now go off, get scholarships, etc. I say to our young people all the time, even if you're not going to make it to West Indies team, even if you're not going to make it to the Olympics, you can still make it in terms of getting a scholarship, getting a free education, seeing the world, and being able to build yourself through sport. And so I am committed, my government is committed, and I believe that we are already seeing the fruits of that commitment paying real dividends for the young people in the island of Nevis and the wider country.
Okay, we're out of time, but I want to give you the chance to, to wrap and give us your parting words. But while you're doing that, can you just say in terms of upgrading these facilities? I know you talked earlier about the first phase of the Mondo track being completed.
Right.
In terms of, completing the second phase, upgrading the E.T. Willett Park, and so forth.
So upgrades are going to be important. Those require resources, and we have been doing some, I would say, more manageable upgrades financially, like in terms of our basketball courts around the island. But the ETW Park is going to be a massive undertaking. In fact, I will tell you that there's a school of thought that says that we should get a whole new facility someplace else. That the problem with ETW is you're hemmed in by Charlestown, and that perhaps having a facility elsewhere, starting from scratch, might be a better approach. The stadium, building a stadium at the Mondo track, that is something that is still on the cards for us, but it's not a priority for this financial year. We have other things that we think are more important that we complete for this financial year. So we continue to invest. If we had the resources, if we had that fair share of that 5.5 billion, I put that at 25%. 25% of 5.5 billion would have pretty much given us $1+ billion. So instead of the 500 million that it is said we squandered in Nevis, we would have had 1.4, 1.5 billion available to us. That didn't come. But I ask our people here in St. Kitts and those in Nevis, to look at what we've done with what we got and make their assessment. I want to thank you, sir, for this opportunity. I confess that I miss the calls, because that's my usual area that I like most, is the people calling in. But nevertheless, I think we had an opportunity to have a robust discussion, a broad-ranging discussion. I was able to share my views and my alternative positions on some issues. And I'm very grateful that in St. Kitts and Nevis we have institutions like WinFM that continue to play their role in encouraging mature discussions, important discussions about what impacts us and how we can make the meaningful changes that will inure to the benefit of generations that are yet unborn. On that path, I am committed. My foot is firmly set, and I will continue to try to do my very best to contribute to the development of St. Kitts and Nevis. So thank you again for the opportunity. It has been a wonderful 2 hours, and I look forward to engaging at any point that I'm invited. And I want to thank Lorraine. She is excellent at arranging these things, and to thank you all for this excellent platform and opportunity to engage with you and with the general public. Thank you, and I wish all my constituents in Nevis, all the people of Nevis, all the beautiful people here in St. Kitts, a wonderful Christmas season. And for those who are partying for Carnival and for Sugar Mass, I wish you safe Sugar Mass 2024. Thank you, and God bless you.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Brantley. So does this mean we're going to see you on the streets, maybe one of the troops?
You won't be seeing me, but I'm sure you'll be seeing others. So, they say, there's a saying in Nevis, the old people say, donkey don't go to horse race, but people who can't dance don't go to street parade. So, if you do see me, I'll be on the sidelines looking on, but I know that others will be, and I encourage them and pray and hope that they have a safe and enjoyable time.
All right. Thanks, Premier.
All right.
There you had it. That was today's edition of Inside the News. We were speaking there with Leader of the Opposition and Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley. Well, this is our final episode for the year. Yes, it has been really good being in your company. We brought you so many topics for discussions. We even got you some information from the IMF World Bank annual meetings in October as well as in April. So it was really good being in your company for the year. Until next time, do enjoy the season. Stay safe. Do not drink and drive. Yes, we've had too many accidents throughout the year, especially the Christmas season. Until next time, the news is up now. Kevin Brown is on the news desk until January.